Welcome to BJFA Salvation TV. What are the 37 miracles of Jesus Christ? In this video, I will share with you the 37 miracles of Jesus Christ during his ministry on the earth. Hello, in this video, I will share with us the miracle of Jesus during his ministries. Number 1. Jesus turns water into wine at a wedding. This was happened in Cana in Galilee. You can see in John chapter 2 verse 1 to 11. Second miracle, Jesus heals a nobleman's son. This takes place in Capernaum in Galilee. You can read this miracle in John chapter 4 verse 43 to 54. 3. Jesus drives out an evil spirit from a man. This miracle takes place in Capernaum in Galilee. You can read this in book of Mark chapter 1 verse 21 27. Fourth miracle, Jesus heals Peter's mother-in-law sick with fever. This was happened in Capernaum in Galilee. Matthew chapter 8 verse 14 to 15 and Mark chapter 1 verse 29 to 31 and Luke chapter 4 verse 38 to 39. 5. Jesus heals many sick and oppressed at the evening. Takes place in Capernaum in Galilee. Can read this miracle in Matthew chapter 8 verse 16 to 17. Mark chapter 1 verse 32 to 34. Luke chapter 4 verse 41. 6. First miraculous catch of fish. This took place in the shore of Sea of Galilee. You can read this miracle in Luke chapter 5 verse 1 to 11. 7. Jesus cleans a man with leprosy. This took place in Galilee. You can read this in book of Matthew chapter 8 verse 1 to 4. Mark chapter 1 verse 40 to 45. Luke chapter 5 verse 12 to 14. 8. Jesus heals a centurion's paralyzed servant. This took place in Capernaum in Galilee. You can read this miracle in Matthew chapter 8 verse 5 to 11 and Luke chapter 7 verse 1 to 10. 9. Jesus heals a paralytic who was laid down from the roof. This miracle took place in Capernaum in Galilee. You can read about this miracle in the book of Matthew chapter 9 verse 1 to 8, Mark chapter 2 verse 1 to 12, Luke chapter 5 verse 11 to 26. 10. Jesus heals a man with hands on the Sabbath. This took place in Capernaum in Galilee. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 12, verse 9 to 14, Mark chapter 3, verse 1 to 6, and Luke chapter 6, verse 6 to 11. Jesus raised a widow's son from the dead. This was took place in Nain. You can read about this miracle in Luke chapter 7, verse 11 to 17. 12. Jesus calmed down the storm on the sea. This was took place in the Sea of Gennesaret. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 8, verse 23 to 27, and Mark chapter 4, verse 35 to 41, and Luke chapter 8, verse 22 to 25. 13. Jesus cast out demons into the heap of pigs. This was took place in the city, the country of Gadarenes. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 8, verse 28, verse 33, and Mark chapter 5, verse 1 to 20. Luke chapter 8, verse 26 to 39. 14. Jesus heals a woman in the crowd with the issue of blood. This was took place in Galilee. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 9, verse 20 to 22, Mark chapter 5, verse 25 to 34, and Luke chapter 8, verse 42 to 48. 15. Jesus raises the Jairus' daughter back to life. This was took place in Capernaum in Galilee. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 9, verse 18, 23 to 26, Mark chapter 5, verse 21 to 24, verse 35 to 43, and Luke chapter 8, verse 40 to 42, and verse 49 to 56. Jesus heals two blind men. 16. This was took place in Capernaum in Galilee. You can read about this in Matthew chapter 9, verse 27 to 31. 17. Jesus heals a man who was unable to speak. This was took place in Capernaum in Galilee. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 9, verse 32 to 34. 18. Jesus heals a man who had an infirmity for 38 years. This was took place in Bethsaida. You can read about this miracle in John chapter 5, verse 1 to 15. 19. Jesus feeds the 5,000 men plus women and children. This was happened in Bethsaida. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 14, verse 13 to 21, and Mark chapter 6, verse 30 to 44, and Luke chapter 9, verse 10 to 17, and John chapter 6, verse 1 to 15. 20. Jesus walks on water. This was took place in the Sea of Galilee. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 14, verse 22 to 33, Mark chapter 6, verse 45 to 52, and John chapter 6, verse 16 to 21. 21. Jesus heals many sick as they touch his garment. This was took place in Gennesaret. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 14, verse 34 to 36, Mark chapter 6, verse 53 to 56. 22. Jesus heals the Syrophoenician woman demon-possessed daughter. This was took place in the borders of Tyre and Sidon. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 15, verse 21 to 28, and Mark chapter 7, verse 24 to 30. 23. Jesus heals deaf and dumb man. This took place in the coast of Decapolis. You can read about the miracle in Mark chapter 7, verse 31 to 37. 24. Jesus fed 4,000 men plus women and children. This took place in Galilee. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 15, verse 32 to 39. And Mark chapter 8, verse 1 to 13. 25. Jesus heals a blind man. This took place in Bethsaida. You can read about the miracle in Mark chapter 8, verse 22 to 26. 26. Jesus heals a man born blind by spitting in his hands. This took place in Jerusalem. You can read about this miracle in John chapter 9, verse 1 to 12. 27. Jesus heals a boy with the unclean spirit. This miracle took place in Mount Hermon. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 17, verse 14 to 20, and Mark chapter 9, verse 14 to 29, and Luke chapter 9, verse 37 to 43. 28. Miraculous temple tax in a fish's mouth. This miracle took place in Capernaum in Galilee. You can read about the miracle in Matthew chapter 17, verse 24 to 27. 29. Jesus heals a blind man, mute, demoniac. This took place in Judea. You can read about the miracle in Matthew chapter 12, verse 22 to 23, and Luke chapter 11, verse 14 to 23. 30. Jesus heals a woman who had been crippled for 18 years. This took place in Judea. You can read about the miracle in Luke chapter 13, verse 10 to 17. 31. Jesus heals a man with dropsy on the Sabbath. This took place in Perea. You can read about this miracle in Luke chapter 14, verse 1 to 6. 32. Jesus cleanses the 10 lepers on the way to Jerusalem. This miracle took place in the borders of Samaria. You can read about this miracle in Luke chapter 17, verse 11 to 19. 33. Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. This miracle take place in Bethany. And you can read about this miracle in John chapter 11, verse 1 to 45. 34. Jesus restores the sight to Bartimaeus. This miracle took place in Jericho. You can read about this miracle in Mark chapter 10, verse 46 to 52, and Luke chapter 18, verse 35 to 43. 35. Jesus weathers the fig tree on the road from Bethany. This miracle taking place in the Mount of Olives. You can read about this miracle in Matthew chapter 21, verse 18 to 22, and Mark chapter 11, verse 12 to 14. 36. Jesus heals a servant's severed ear while he is being arrested. This took place in Gethsemane. You can read about this in the book of Luke, chapter 22, verse 50 to 51. And 37, the second miraculous catch of fish. This miracle took place in the Sea of Tiberias. You can read about this miracle in John chapter 21, verse 4 to 11. These are the miracles of Jesus during his ministry. So these are 37 miracles of Jesus that took place in his life during his ministry. Thank you and God bless. Thank you for watching and listening. For more videos, subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon. God bless. Thank you.